All right, let's bring in right now the top-ranking Democrat in the U.S. Senate, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York. Senator Schumer, let's start by talking about what's happening in your hometown, what's happening in New York City. New York for years has had people going out in the streets. They've been protesting peacefully. I remember talking to Reverend Al Sharpton after Eric Garner, I call it a murder, how there were huge protests, but peaceful protests. Now you have the governor and the mayor of New York City trading barbs at each other. The governor of New York talking about how horribly managed this situation has been. Tell me, what's going on in New York City? Why are we seeing other cities move toward peace and New York City continue to be as tumultuous as it is?
Well, I think things are improving over the last day or two in New York, and I'm going to defer to the mayor and governor as to how to use the resources, the many resources at their command. I'm not sitting right at their side, know that. But I will tell you this. The overwhelming majority of protesters in New York, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, are peaceful protesters. And as you said, Joe, this is a great tradition of New York. Often New York is the conscience of the nation. We lead the country to realize our faults and to try and change them. And I think that I am proud that so many young people are out there. We've said over and over again, the greatest worry we have about the young people is that they're apathetic. And now they're not apathetic, and they're looking at what is the poison of America, which has been racism and racial division, which has been with us for centuries, and saying we must change it. And they're not just doing it for a day or two. They keep doing it day after day after day. The overwhelming majority peaceful. You know, the violence has to be condemned, and it has to be punished. But Donald Trump is the person who wants us to think the protesters are all violent, and that's why he has to fire rubber bullets at families in Lafayette Park. Donald Trump wants us to believe that every protester is a danger, when in fact our country is a nation of protests. The Patriots were protesters and created our country because of it. So I think that I'm proud of New York, and I'm proud of the protests, and I think it's part of the tradition of New York. The violence is bad, reprehensible, should be condemned, but it is not the overwhelming picture in New York.
Senator Schumer, Willie Geist, good to see you this morning. You mentioned the incidents a couple of nights ago in Lafayette Park. You obviously came out quickly and denounced that, as did others. But yesterday we heard from someone perhaps we didn't expect to hear from, General Mattis, the former Secretary of Defense under President Trump, who called that moment an abuse of executive authority with troops going in and clearing that park. He also said of the man he used to serve, President Trump tries to divide us and doesn't even pretend that he's trying to unite us. What did you make of the criticism from General Mattis?
I thought it was amazing. I know General Mattis. He's very reluctant to do this. But I think he was doing two things. One, he was sending a shot across the bow to the military leaders. Don't let this president, who would try to be as dictatorial as he could be, use you. Don't do that, because that's not the tradition of the military. The tradition of the military is to protect our freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to protest, freedom of religion. And second, he was saying to the military and to all of America, to everyone in America, the protesters are part of what we should be proud of in America. We need change. His condemnation of President Trump was right on the money at a time when so many Americans, and we're not just talking about any political party or region, but the vast majority of Americans are longing for somebody to bring us together, to do what George Bush, for instance, did on the Pile. I stood with him there after 9/11. And instead we have a president who delights in dividing us, who loves throwing matches on the conflagration, who loves any time that there is a need for unity to do division. And that is not what Americans want. And I'll tell you, this president is such a failure. And one more point, Willie, if I might. Where are our Senate Republicans? We put a resolution on the floor of the Senate, no rhetoric, very few adjectives or adverbs, that simply said we protect and cherish the right of peaceful protest. We condemn violence, and we condemn what President Trump did Monday night. McConnell went to the floor to block it. And one of the groups, in addition to General Mattis, that might, who knows, with this president, have some sway over him are Senate Republicans. And whether on this or on doing a robust COVID bill, which would help deal with some of the economic inequalities that people of color face, we see them not doing anything. Last week, a few days ago, McConnell, when listed what we should do this month, didn't even talk about COVID and didn't even talk about the HEROES bill. They're derelict in their responsibilities, and we need them now more than ever, like we need General Mattis and Admiral Mullen, to stand up to a president who is a would-be dictator. He knows no limits. He only knows limits when people put things in his way. Mattis put a big symbolic barrier in his way and bolstered, I think, the instincts of some of the good people in the military who say we can't be used like this.
Senator Schumer, good morning. It's Casey Hunt. It's nice to see you.
Hi, Casey.
Before we faced these very difficult images of police, some of them not identified, in the streets here in Washington, President Trump was talking about voting by mail and suggesting that perhaps results of elections come November should be called into question. We've sort of seen him lay the groundwork to raise questions about outcomes of elections, perhaps his own. Are Democrats thinking about how to counter that in November? What actions are you taking to try and communicate with people around that? Is that something that you view as a threat going forward?
Well, you never know what this president will do. Every time you think there's some boundary, he goes beyond it and beyond it. Lafayette Park incident, the terrible things that happened there is one of them. Well, one thing we have done, as you know, Casey, in the HEROES bill, the COVID-4 bill, is a robust election package to allow every American to vote by mail, to make sure those votes are counted accurately. We are also working on provisions that would prevent, greatly deter foreign interference. The president doesn't even seem to care if Russia, Iran, China interfere in our elections. And if past his prologue, they're going to try to do it again. So we're trying all these kinds of things. And, well, you know, the bottom line is that you never can underestimate how bad this president will be in every instance. But right now, we're trying to protect the election, make it secure, and allow everyone who wants to vote by mail. And we're going to fight for that in the COVID-4 bill.
All right. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, thank you so much. Always good to talk to you. And coming up next, Valerie Jarrett standing by. She's going to break down President Obama's comments yesterday and what else the former president may say ahead of November. Morning Joe coming right back. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.